ready to dive back into the dating pool after divorce, but maybe feeling like it's a whole new world out there.
It definitely can be, especially for women.
Exactly. And that's what we're tackling today on this deep dive. We're flipping the script, taking advice meant for men and seeing how it can empower you, ladies out there, on your dating journey.
Sometimes seeing things from a different perspective, even if it wasn't initially for you, can spark some really surprising insights.
So true. Our source material today is a YouTube video called Dating After Divorce, Rebound Relationships, and Finding Yourself. Now, the speaker is addressing men, but we're on a mission to extract the golden nuggets that women can use too. What jumps out at you from this video? What are those key takeaways our listeners can apply to their own lives?
Well, right off the bat, he talks about rebound relationships. He compares them to a football player celebrating a touchdown and then immediately getting injured.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's a warning against rushing back into the game before you're really ready.
So how do we translate that for a woman who's recently divorced? Is jumping into a new relationship just as risky for her?
Absolutely. Rebound relationships can be tempting for anyone after a divorce. I mean, that desire for connection and validation, it's strong. But like the football player analogy, if you rush into a new relationship before you've healed emotionally, you're setting yourself up for potential heartache. It's like building a house on a shaky foundation.
Oh, I like that. Building a house on a shaky foundation, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
So how do you know if you're truly ready to date again? Or if you're just on the rebound?
That's the million-dollar question, right? There's no magic formula, unfortunately, but some red flags to watch for include constantly comparing the new person to your ex, or trying to fill the void of your divorce with someone new, or seeking validation instead of genuine connection. It's really about understanding your motivations. Why are you doing this?
Those are some really good points to keep in mind because it is so easy to fall into those traps when you're feeling vulnerable and maybe a little lost after a divorce.
Yes, and that's where self-awareness comes in. Taking the time to reflect on your emotions, your needs, and understand why you're entering the dating scene. Are you doing it from a place of strength, of self-love? Or are you trying to escape the discomfort of being alone?
That makes a lot of sense. So instead of rushing into a new relationship, maybe it's better to take a time out, to reconnect with yourself.
Yeah.
Figure out what you really want, kind of like pressing that reset button.
Exactly. It's about making sure you're emotionally and mentally ready for a new relationship rather than just trying to avoid being single. It's like going on a road trip. You wouldn't just start driving without checking your car first.
Right. Make sure you've got enough gas, the tires are good.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of avoiding rebounds, making sure you're truly ready to date. Now, another thing that this YouTube guy talks about is how men often feel emasculated and insecure after divorce.
And while that term might not directly apply to women, the emotions behind it, the insecurity, loss of identity, fear of inadequacy, those are definitely universal. Divorce can really shake anyone's sense of self, regardless of gender.
So how might those insecurities then show up in men's behavior when they start dating again? What should women be aware of?
It can manifest in different ways. Some men might become overly eager to please, like they're trying to prove their worth. Others might become withdrawn or defensive, afraid of getting hurt again. And sadly, some might try to mask their vulnerability with aggression or controlling behavior. It's a defense mechanism.
That's really helpful to understand. Knowing this, what can women do to create a safe space for open communication and vulnerability when dating someone who might be struggling with these insecurities?
Patience and understanding are key. Recognize that this is a sensitive time for them, approach conversations with empathy, and avoid judgment. Remember, building trust takes time.
So basically, lead with kindness and create an environment where they feel comfortable being open and honest about their feelings.
Exactly, and remember that communication goes both ways. Share your own feelings and needs too. Open communication builds a strong foundation for any relationship.
This is already shifting my perspective on dating.
Yeah.
It's not just about finding someone who checks all the boxes, but also about understanding their emotional landscape and creating a space for genuine connection.
You've hit the nail on the head. Now, the next point he discusses is the what he calls the transactional nature of dating. The idea that men and women are looking for different things or resources, as he puts it.
Interesting. That's an interesting concept, but also potentially controversial. How can we unpack that without falling into harmful generalizations about what men and women want?
It's definitely important to approach this without judgment. He suggests that traditionally men might seek companionship, intimacy, and domestic support, while women prioritize financial stability, security, and emotional connection.
But those are just broad generalizations.
Yeah.
In reality, everyone's needs and desires are unique, right?
Absolutely. We're not walking stereotypes. The real takeaway here isn't about specific resources, but recognizing that every individual brings something different to the table in a relationship.
So instead of viewing dating as a transaction where you're trying to get the best deal, it's more about finding a partnership where both people feel valued and fulfilled.
Precisely. It's about understanding and appreciating the unique qualities and contributions of each individual. And that brings us back to open communication. By honestly expressing your needs and expectations, you create a relationship that benefits both partners.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. Communication, empathy, and understanding each other's needs are crucial for building a healthy and fulfilling connection. And this applies to all relationships, not just romantic ones.
You're absolutely right. These are valuable skills to have in any area of life. Now, he also emphasizes the power of no and how men need to set boundaries and communicate their limits. Let's flip that for our listener. How can women embrace this power of no in their dating lives?
Let's talk about boundaries, because I think this is especially crucial for women who often feel societal pressure to be agreeable or accommodating.
You're absolutely right. Learning to say no confidently and without guilt is essential for protecting your emotional well-being and creating healthy relationships.
So how can women learn to set boundaries effectively? Because it can be so hard to say no sometimes, especially when you're trying to please someone or avoid conflict.
It takes practice, but it starts with being clear about your own values, your non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what are the things you absolutely will not tolerate in a relationship? Once you know your limits, communicate them clearly and assertively.
And what about those situations where you feel pressured or uncomfortable, but you're not sure how to say no gracefully?
In those situations, it's even more important to stand your ground. Remember, you have the right to say no at any time for any reason. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Your safety and well-being come first.
It's about honoring your own needs and limits, even if it means potentially disappointing someone else.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to enforce those boundaries. If someone repeatedly disrespects your limits, it might be time to reevaluate the relationship. You deserve to be with someone who respects you and your choices.
Okay, I'm already feeling more empowered just by talking about this. Now, the last point I want to touch on from the YouTube video is the metaphor he uses about a camel slowly taking over a tent. He uses this to describe how relationships can escalate, unintentionally warning men not to let things get out of hand without consciously choosing that path.
It's a funny image, but it makes a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new connection and let things progress without really considering the long-term implications.
So how can women avoid finding themselves in a situation they didn't consciously choose, or with a camel in their tent, so to speak?
Again, it goes back to clear communication and intentionality. Define your own pace and be upfront about your expectations. Don't be afraid to have those defining the relationship conversations, even if they feel a little awkward.
Yeah. It's better to be awkward than wake up one day and realize you're sharing your life with a camel you never invited in.
Exactly. Remember, you're not obligated to follow anyone else's timeline or expectations. Take your time, get to know the person, and make sure your values and goals align before taking things to the next level.
This is such great advice. So be intentional, communicate your needs, and don't let that camel sneak into your tent. But before we go any further, we'll need to take a quick break and come back for part 2.
I'm looking forward to diving into even more insights in the next part.
And we hope you'll join us. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2 of our deep dive into dating after divorce, designed specifically for you. If you're enjoying this episode, share it with a friend who might find it helpful too.
It's fascinating how this YouTube guy emphasizes the idea of men needing to grow up after divorce. He suggests they need to evolve, become better versions of themselves to avoid repeating those past mistakes.
That's a powerful message for women too. Divorce can be a real catalyst for personal growth, a chance to shed old patterns and step into a new chapter.
Absolutely. It's a chance to redefine who you are, what you want, and what you deserve.
Exactly. So how can women use this post-divorce period as a springboard for personal growth? What are some concrete steps?
Well, one of the most important things is to prioritize self-care. This is a time for healing and rebuilding, making sure you're taking care of your physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
Things like therapy, exercise, healthy eating, spending time with loved ones, all that good stuff.
Exactly. It's also a great time to explore new interests or revisit old passions. Maybe there's something you've always wanted to try but never had the time or courage. Now's your chance.
Like rediscovering yourself, starting with a blank canvas.
That's a great way to put it. And don't be afraid to seek support. Lean on your friends, family, or a therapist. Surround yourself with people who uplift and encourage you.
It's so important to have that support system, especially during those challenging times.
Makes all the difference. And remember, personal growth is a journey, not a destination. It's okay to stumble along the way. The key is to keep learning, keep evolving, and keep striving to become the best version of yourself.
I love that. Progress, not perfection. Okay, so we've talked about self-care, exploring new interests, and seeking support. What other advice from our YouTube source can we apply to empower women on their post-divorce journey?
He makes an interesting point about consent and boundaries, but from a very male-centric perspective. He talks about how men need to be careful not to imply consent without explicitly giving it, especially in physical relationships.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Let's turn that around and talk about how women can ensure their own boundaries are respected and their consent is always honored.
This is so crucial, especially in a dating landscape where women are often socialized to be accommodating or hesitant to assert their needs.
So how can women navigate this? How can they ensure they're always in control of their choices and boundaries?
It all starts with remembering that your body, your rules, you have the absolute right to say no to anything that makes you uncomfortable, regardless of the stage of the relationship.
No means no, plain and simple.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to be vocal about your boundaries. Communicate your expectations clearly and directly. If something doesn't feel right, speak up.
What about those situations where it's not so clear-cut? Like maybe you're not sure how you feel or you're afraid of hurting someone's feelings.
Even then, it's essential to trust your instincts. If you're hesitant or unsure, it's perfectly okay to slow things down, take a step back. You don't owe anyone an explanation or justification for your choices.
Better to err on the side of caution.
Absolutely. If someone pressures you or disrespects your boundaries, that's a huge red flag. A healthy relationship is built on mutual respect and consent.
It's about owning your power and making choices that align with your values and needs.
You got it. And remember, consent is an ongoing conversation. It's not a one-time thing. It's about checking in with each other throughout the relationship and making sure everyone feels safe and respected.
Okay. I'm feeling more and more empowered with each point we discuss. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more piece of advice from our YouTube source I want to explore. He talks about the dangers of rebound relationships, warning men not to rush into anything too quickly after a divorce.
And of course, this applies to women just as much. Rebound relationships can be tempting, but they often come with a lot of baggage and can actually hinder true healing.
So how can women recognize the signs of a rebound relationship, both in themselves and potential partners?
One red flag is moving too fast. If you're already talking about moving in or getting married after just a few weeks, that's a sign to slow down and check your motivation.
Whoa, pump the brakes.
Exactly. Another warning sign is constantly comparing your new partner to your ex. If you're not over your past relationship, it's going to be difficult to build a healthy future with someone new.
It's like you're still carrying that baggage from your previous relationship.
You are. And it's not fair to you or your new partner. It's important to allow yourself time to heal, process your emotions before jumping into another relationship.
Take your time, heal your heart, and make sure you're entering the dating scene from a place of wholeness, not heartache.
Exactly. And if you find yourself drawn to someone who's also fresh out of a relationship, proceed with caution. It's important to make sure you're both on the same page and ready for a healthy, committed relationship.
I'm seeing how all these pieces fit together. Self-awareness, boundaries, consent, taking time for healing. These are all essential ingredients for creating healthy and fulfilling relationships after divorce. This conversation has been so insightful.
I agree. We're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to uncover. Are you ready to dive into the final part of our deep dive?
Let's do it. I'm ready to see what other gems we can uncover. Welcome back to our deep dive into dating after divorce. We're laser focused on insights for you.
It's amazing how just shifting perspective, like we are, can reveal so much.
Absolutely. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to go back to a point from the YouTube video that really struck a chord with me. He talks about how men often feel this pressure to, perform in the dating world. Like they have to have all the answers and make all the right moves.
Almost as if they have to play a certain role, which, yeah, that can be incredibly draining and inauthentic.
Exactly. And I think women face similar pressures, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
There's this expectation to be, charming, agreeable, and, effortlessly put together all the time.
Oh, absolutely. It creates so much anxiety and self-doubt, feeling like you're constantly being judged and evaluated. It's tough.
So how can women break free from those expectations and approach dating in a more, I don't know, authentic and empowering way?
I think it starts with self-acceptance. Truly embracing who you are, flaws and all. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and connection. Remember that.
So ditch the mask and just be yourself.
Exactly. Let your true personality shine through. That's what makes you unique and attractive. Trying to be someone you're not is exhausting, and honestly, it's just not sustainable.
It's about owning your worth and showing up authentically. I love that.
And remember, dating should be fun. It's a chance to connect with new people, explore different possibilities. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to find the one right away. Just enjoy the journey.
Relax, be yourself, and have fun. What a fantastic note to end on. But before we say goodbye, there's one last thought I want to leave our listeners with. The source material we've been discussing mainly focuses on heterosexual relationships.
Right. And it's important to acknowledge that the dynamics and challenges of dating can be different in same-sex relationships.
For sure. So I'd love for our listeners to ponder this. How might the advice we've discussed today apply differently or even uniquely to those navigating the world of same-sex dating?
That's a really interesting question, and it highlights how important it is to recognize the diversity of experiences within the LGBTQ+ community.
Well said. And remember, no matter who you are or who you love, you deserve to find love and happiness.
Absolutely. So go out there, be yourself, and create the dating experience you deserve.
Couldn't agree more. And if you found this deep dive insightful, hit that follow button and share with a friend who's also navigating the world of dating. We're all in this together.